I've done close protection work in 17 systems across 9 years, and the one lesson that's kept me alive is this: be forgettable. Not incompetent, forgettable. The kind of professional who does the job so well that clients stop noticing you're there. That's why Marcus North gets hired. Clean background, solid references, absolutely unremarkable presence that blends into any security detail without drawing attention. The contract came through standard channels 3 weeks ago. Guard rotation at the Thessari Royal Palace. Stand watch during formal court sessions. Follow protocol. Don't interact with nobility unless directly addressed. Standard close protection work in a fancier location than usual. The pay was good. Thessari contracts always are when they hire human specialists. The background check accepted my documentation without question because Marcus North's credentials are impeccable. 5 years of documented security experience across multiple employers who will confirm my competence if contacted. None of them know that Marcus North didn't exist 7 years ago. That the man who became Marcus North buried his real name so deep that even I sometimes forget it was ever mine. The Thessari Royal Palace is exactly the kind of posting that Marcus North excels at. Formal, protocol-heavy, with security procedures so refined that individual contractors just need to follow established patterns without improvising or drawing attention. I'm positioned along the eastern wall of the Grand Court Chamber with 5 other human contractors, all of us in identical dark uniforms that mark us as security, without competing with the elaborate ceremonial attire of Thessari nobility. The Thessari are an old species, 8,000 years of recorded civilization, elaborate court hierarchies, skin that shifts through colors communicating complex emotional states. I've learned to read basic meanings during my 3 weeks here. Gold means confidence or pleasure, blue means contemplation, white means shock or fear. Today's session has been running for 90 minutes. Everything routine, exactly as briefed during my orientation. Various delegations presenting petitions, the Queen hearing formal requests, court officials managing the ceremonial flow of governance. I'm doing exactly what I'm paid to do. Standing watch, scanning for anomalies, maintaining professional presence that contributes to overall security without being individually notable. My eyes track movement patterns, assess threat potential, monitor entry points. Professional awareness that's become so automatic after 9 years that I can maintain it while my conscious mind barely engages. Then Queen Isaveth enters for the afternoon session. I've seen her dozens of times over the past 3 weeks. She attends most court functions, and I've pulled guard duty for enough of them that her presence shouldn't register as remarkable. But something is different today. She sweeps into the chamber with practiced grace, ceremonial robes shifting colors in response to ambient light, skin showing the confident gold of comfortable authority. Then she pauses. Her stride breaks its rhythm for just a fraction of a second. Her attention shifts from the formal greeting she's receiving to something along the eastern wall. To us, to the human security detail. Her gaze moves across the line of contractors, then stops. On me. It's not a casual glance. It's focused attention that lingers 2-3 seconds longer than it should. Her skin flickers through colors I can't quite interpret from this distance, blue shifting to something darker, then to white for just an instant before settling back to controlled gold. Professional alarm bells start ringing in my head. I've been made somehow. Someone's recognized something about me despite the 7 years, and the new identity, and the careful construction of Marcus North's completely legitimate background. The Queen descends from the entry platform and moves toward the throne, but her attention keeps drifting back to me. I can feel her gaze even when I'm not looking directly at her. This is bad. This is the scenario I've spent 7 years ensuring would never happen. Someone from my past recognizing me despite the buried identity and the careful anonymity. The session proceeds. Delegations present their petitions. The Queen responds with formal grace and practiced authority, but every few minutes her attention shifts to the eastern wall, to me. Then, 40 minutes into the afternoon session, she does something that makes my blood run cold. She interrupts a petitioner mid-sentence, raises one hand for silence, and speaks directly across the chamber. Captain Jacob Reeves. The name cuts through the formal atmosphere like a blade. My real name. The name I buried 7 years ago along with everything it represented. I did not expect, Queen Isaveth continues, her voice carrying perfect clarity across the suddenly silent chamber, to see you standing guard in my court. Every eye in the room turns toward the eastern wall, toward the human security contractors, toward me. I feel my carefully constructed anonymity disintegrating in real time. Professional training keeps my expression neutral even as my mind races through implications and options. Deny the name. The Queen clearly knows something. Acknowledge it. That destroys 7 years of carefully maintained cover. Your Majesty, I say, keeping my voice level despite the adrenaline spike, I believe there's been some confusion. My name is Marcus North. I'm contracted through Redstone Security Services as... I know what name you use now, Queen Isaveth interrupts gently, her skin shifting to thoughtful blue. I know the identity you have built over the past 7 years. I know the credentials you carry and the background that supports them. She descends from her throne, an unprecedented break from protocol that makes several court officials show alarm-white skin. But I also know who you were before you became Marcus North. I know who you are beneath the carefully constructed anonymity, and I know what you did during the Kelthara Intervention that does not appear in any official record. Kelthara. The word hits me like physical impact, the planet where everything went wrong, where Captain Jacob Reeves made choices that saved some lives and ended others, where the man I was died along with everyone else who knew what really happened. Your Majesty, I don't know what you're referring to, I try, but we both know it's a lie. The Queen crosses the formal distance between throne and security positions, a violation of protocol so severe that guards are looking uncertain whether to intervene. She stops directly in front of me, close enough that her next words will carry only to my immediate vicinity despite the chamber's acoustic perfection. 7 years ago, she says quietly, I was on Kelthara during what official records call a humanitarian crisis requiring emergency evacuation. What those records do not mention is that I was there against my council's advice, attempting to personally negotiate a ceasefire in a civil conflict that was escalating toward genocide. My hands remain steady through professional discipline, but internally I'm reliving every moment of those 72 hours. The records do not mention, Queen Isaveth continues, her skin showing colors that look like grief and gratitude mixed, that insurgent forces attempted to take me hostage to force Thessari military withdrawal from the system. They do not mention that a human mercenary captain named Jacob Reeves prevented that hostage-taking through tactical actions that violated every established rule of engagement and resulted in significant civilian casualties. Your Majesty, please, I start, but she raises one hand. The records do not mention that Captain Reeves held a defensive position in the Kelthara refugee complex for 8 hours while evacuation operations proceeded, that he made the tactical decision to collapse an entire wing of that complex to prevent insurgent advance, knowing that doing so would kill civilians who had not yet evacuated along with the insurgents threatening them. The chamber is absolutely silent. Every Thessari present is staring at us, at their queen standing face-to-face with a human security contractor, while revealing classified information about an event that officially never happened. The records do not mention, the Queen says, her voice carrying old pain, that Captain Reeves personally extracted me from the building moments before initiating the collapse, that he told me to run toward the evacuation zone and not look back, that when I did look back, because of course I looked back, I saw him walking into the section of the complex he was about to destroy, presumably to give warning to anyone who might still be inside. She's not exposing me out of malice. She's stating facts that I've spent 7 years trying to forget existed. The official casualty report from the Kelthara complex collapse lists 17 insurgents and 9 civilians killed. Queen Isaveth continues. The actual count, which I pieced together from sealed intelligence reports and survivor testimonies, was significantly higher. Captain Reeves made a tactical decision that saved my life and prevented a hostage crisis that would have escalated into full-scale civil war. But that decision cost civilian lives, many civilian lives. Her skin shifts to deeper blue, and according to every official report I could access, Captain Reeves died in the collapse along with the insurgents and civilians. His body was never recovered. He was declared killed in action, and his record was sealed under classified protocols. That's what the reports say. Yes, I managed to get out. But you are standing here, Isaveth observes, alive, using a different name, working as a security contractor, as though you are simply another professional rather than the man who saved my life and prevented a war at the cost of your own identity and the lives of people you were trying to protect. I don't know what to say, don't know how to respond to having my carefully buried past excavated in front of an entire royal court. Why? The Queen asks, her voice softening. Queen Isaveth's skin shifts through contemplative colors as she processes my answer. The court remains silent, hanging on every word of this unprecedented exchange. You could have demanded compensation, she says. Could have leveraged your knowledge of what happened on Kelthara to extract payment, political favors, official recognition. Instead, you disappeared completely and rebuilt your life under an assumed identity, working the same profession without any of the acclaim your actions might have earned. What happened on Kelthara doesn't deserve acclaim, I reply. It deserves to stay buried along with the people who died because of tactical decisions I made. The civilians killed in that collapse, they don't get recognition or compensation or the chance to rebuild their lives. The least I can do is refuse to profit from their deaths. So you buried Jacob Reeves not because you were ashamed, the Queen observes, but because you were grieving. Not because your actions dishonored you, but because accepting honor for those actions would dishonor the people whose deaths made them possible. I buried Jacob Reeves because I couldn't carry that name and that weight simultaneously, I say. Marcus North doesn't have to wake up remembering the faces of children who died in a building collapse I triggered. Jacob Reeves does. That's the difference. The Queen turns to address the full court, her voice taking on formal authority. I reveal this history not to expose Captain Reeves's alias or force him back into an identity he chose to abandon. I reveal it because this court should understand what kind of person stands guard along that wall. Not merely contracted security, but someone who saved my life and prevented catastrophic war through actions that cost him everything he was willing to claim as his own. She looks back at me. You buried your name not in shame but in grief, not because you were dishonored but because you could not bear the honor attached to actions that required such terrible costs. That is not weakness. That is a recognition of moral complexity that most warriors never achieve. Her skin shifts to warm gold, profound respect. You took a contract to guard my throne as though you were simply another professional. But by standing in that position, by continuing to serve under a different name, you have been repaying a debt you never claimed existed. There is no debt, Your Majesty, I say firmly. I did my job during Kelthara. The consequences of that job, the weight of the choices I made, those are mine to bear. You don't owe me anything. I owe you my life, Isaveth replies. I owe you the prevention of a war that would have killed thousands. I owe you acknowledgement of the personal cost you paid for those outcomes. And I owe you the respect of recognizing that you chose to bury your name and your recognition rather than trading on what you had earned. She gestures to her chief advisor. Let it be recorded, Marcus North, currently contracted security personnel, is also known by his former identity as Captain Jacob Reeves. He served during the Kelthara Intervention with distinction that required profound personal sacrifice. He is under royal protection and royal recognition, regardless of which name he chooses to use going forward. Your Majesty, I didn't come here seeking recognition, I protest. I know, the Queen says. That's precisely why you deserve it. You came here to do a job. You stood guard in silence, maintaining the same professionalism that defined your service 7 years ago. You were content to remain anonymous, to let the past stay buried. Her skin shifts through complex colors. But I could not let you remain anonymous once I recognized you. Not because I wish to force you back into an identity you abandoned, but because this court needs to understand that humans do not always seek honor for what they have done. That some names are buried not in shame but in grief. That sometimes the greatest service is rendered by those who ask for nothing in return. She addresses the court again. Captain Reeves made decisions during Kelthara that saved my life and prevented war. Those decisions required him to bear costs that most of us will never fully comprehend. He responded to those costs not by demanding recognition, but by burying the name associated with them and continuing to serve under a new identity. That speaks to a conception of honor that values integrity over accolades. The Queen returns her attention to me. You may continue using the name Marcus North if you prefer. I will not force Jacob Reeves back into existence if that name carries weight you cannot bear. But I wanted this court to know, needed them to understand, that the man standing guard is not merely contracted security, but someone who has already demonstrated loyalty and sacrifice beyond what any contract could require. I stand there processing what just happened. My carefully maintained anonymity is destroyed. The past I buried has been excavated and displayed before an entire royal court. But the Queen's words, acknowledging the grief rather than celebrating the victory, recognizing the cost rather than glorifying the outcome, that's more understanding than I expected or thought possible. Thank you, Your Majesty, I say, because I don't know what else is appropriate. Thank you, Captain, she replies, for Kelthara, for preventing catastrophe through choices that cost you more than most people will ever know, for being willing to carry that weight in silence, and for continuing to serve even when you could have walked away from this profession entirely. The court session eventually resumes, though the atmosphere has fundamentally changed. People look at me differently now, not just as hired security, but as someone with history and significance that had been invisible until the Queen chose to make it visible. After the session concludes, I'm summoned to private audience with Queen Isaveth in chambers far removed from the formal court spaces. I apologize for exposing your identity so publicly, she says immediately, before I can even execute a proper formal greeting. I could have approached you privately, could have kept the revelation between us rather than announcing it to the entire court. Why didn't you? I ask, dispensing with formality since she clearly has. Because the court needed to understand, Isaveth replies, her skin shifting to thoughtful blue. Needed to know that the humans we work with often carry histories we cannot see. That someone standing guard in silence might have saved our empire while asking for nothing in return. That honor is sometimes expressed through anonymity rather than acclaim. She settles into a chair and gestures for me to do the same, informality that emphasizes this is personal conversation rather than official audience. Also, she continues, because I have spent 7 years wondering whether you survived Kelthara. Official reports declared you killed in action. Your body was never recovered, which could mean it was destroyed in the collapse or... She pauses, or that you had survived and chosen to let Jacob Reeves remain officially dead. I survived, I confirm. Barely. There was a service tunnel that intelligence reports hadn't documented, probably why the insurgents chose that section of the complex for their operations. I used it to escape after initiating the collapse. By the time I made it to evacuation zones, the casualty lists had already been filed. It seemed easier to stay dead as Jacob Reeves than to come back and face questions about what happened in that building. What did happen? The Queen asks gently. The official reports are remarkably sparse on details. I take a breath, considering how much to say. I made a tactical decision that saved your life and prevented the hostage crisis. That decision required collapsing the south wing of the refugee complex on positions held by insurgents who were using civilians as shields and human obstacles. The memories are as clear as if it happened yesterday rather than 7 years ago. I gave as much warning as I could through the complex's emergency system. I tried to clear as many civilians as possible from the collapse zone. But there wasn't time to evacuate everyone, and the tactical situation didn't allow for delay. The insurgents were advancing toward your position. If I waited for complete civilian evacuation, they would have taken you hostage before I could prevent it. So you made the choice, Isaveth says quietly. I made the choice, I confirm. 9 civilians officially died in that collapse. The real number was higher. I know because I saw some of them through the tunnel access points as I was escaping. Families who didn't make it to exits in time. Children who were too slow. Elderly people who couldn't run fast enough. I killed them as surely as if I had shot them directly, even though I was trying to save them from worse fates. The Queen's skin shifts to grief blue. You made an impossible choice. I made the necessary choice, I correct. That doesn't make it good or right, just necessary. And living with necessary choices that cost innocent lives, I couldn't do that as Captain Jacob Reeves, decorated officer with official recognition and honors. So I became Marcus North, security contractor who doesn't have to explain why he sometimes wakes up at 300 seeing the faces of people he killed while trying to save them. You could have demanded compensation for what you did, Isaveth observes. Could have used your knowledge of the incident to extract payment or political leverage. The people who died in that collapse don't get compensation or leverage, I reply. They don't get anything except to be counted in casualty statistics that most people will never see. The least I can do is refuse to profit from their deaths. What happened on Kelthara stays on Kelthara. That was always the deal. The Queen is quiet for a long moment, her skin cycling through contemplative colors. You understand honor in ways that most warriors never achieve, not as glory to be claimed but as cost to be acknowledged. Not as recognition to be earned, but as weight to be carried in silence. I understand that killing civilians, even when tactically necessary, doesn't deserve recognition, I say. It deserves to be remembered accurately rather than celebrated dishonestly. The civilians who died in Kelthara weren't heroic sacrifices. They were people who died because I made a tactical decision. That's the truth. I won't dishonor them by pretending it was anything more glorious. Queen Isaveth's skin shifts to deep gold, profound respect. By burying your name, by refusing recognition, by continuing to serve without demanding acknowledgement of past service, you give those civilians the only honor you can. The acknowledgement that their deaths mattered enough to cost you the identity associated with causing them. We sit in silence for several minutes, the weight of Kelthara present between us. What happens now? I finally ask. My cover is blown. Marcus North's background won't withstand the scrutiny that will come now that everyone knows he's also Jacob Reeves. Now, the Queen says, you decide which name you want to use going forward. Marcus North with royal acknowledgement of your true identity, or Jacob Reeves returned from official death. Either way, you have my protection and my recognition. The court knows who you are beneath whichever name you choose. And if I want to maintain the anonymity, I ask. If I want to continue being the forgettable professional rather than the war hero with complicated history, then I will respect that choice, Isaveth replies. I revealed your identity because the court needed to understand what kind of person stands guard in their presence. But how you carry that identity forward, whether you reclaim Jacob Reeves or continue as Marcus North, that choice remains yours. She stands, signaling the private audience is concluding. You buried your name in grief, not shame. You carry weight that most people cannot comprehend. You deserve recognition for that burden even if you don't want celebration of the actions that created it. That recognition is now public record. What you do with it is your decision. I leave the private chambers still processing everything that happened. My anonymity is shattered. The past I buried has been excavated. But the Queen's understanding, her recognition that grief and honor can coexist, that necessary choices don't require celebration, that gives me something I didn't know I needed. Weeks pass. I continue my security contract, standing guard during court sessions. People look at me differently now, knowing that Marcus North is also Jacob Reeves, that the quiet professional in the dark uniform saved their queen and prevented a war while asking for nothing. Some offer respect I don't want. Others offer sympathy I don't deserve. A few simply nod acknowledgement and leave it at that, which I appreciate most. The Queen occasionally catches my eye during sessions, her expression suggesting she understands the weight I carry. That she knows I'm not here seeking redemption or recognition, but simply doing the work because it's what I know how to do. I am Marcus North, security contractor. I was Jacob Reeves, captain who made impossible choices. The name doesn't change what I did or what it cost, but knowing that someone understands why I buried one name to carry the weight under another, that helps in ways I didn't expect. The Queen recognized the name I buried. She exposed it not from vengeance but from recognition. She acknowledged a debt I never claimed. And by doing so, she gave me something unexpected. Understanding that grief and honor aren't mutually exclusive, that necessary choices don't require celebration, that some names are buried not to hide shame, but to mark the cost of doing what had to be done. I took a contract to guard the throne. The Queen recognized who I was beneath the name I use. And somehow, that recognition, painful as it was to have the past excavated, carried a weight of understanding I'd never found in 7 years of anonymous service. The galaxy learned something that day, that humans don't always seek honor for what they've done.